All right, hello once again, Jeff Scott of Rankin Technical College, and as part of the Rankin Technical College AWD 1000 Web Development Technologies course, I'm creating a series of videos based on the Mozilla Developer Network Learn Web Development Series. I'm in the JavaScript portion, and we're just getting into it, talking about what is JavaScript. So I left off last time right here, server-side versus client-side code. Now, an interesting thing about JavaScript. JavaScript is really garnishing or getting a lot of favor these days due to the fact that you can run JavaScript on both the client side and the server side. So when you hear the term full stack developer, typically what they're saying is just that you can use JavaScript on both the client and the server. Now, I'm being a little general here, because there's more to it than that. But the point is, many people like JavaScript for the fact that you learn one language, you learn it well, and you can use it both on the client and on the server. You'll notice that later on in this series, there'll be a thing on dynamic websites, server-side programming. So we'll talk about it later. All right. Dynamic versus static code. It says the word dynamic is used to describe both client-side JavaScript and server-side language. You got to look at it this way. If something is dynamic, it can happen in real time. So for instance, if I add JavaScript to my web page, you already saw this on the I Love Missouri page. If I go down to the bottom here, and you'll notice the last time I ran this page was a while ago, so let me refresh it. And you'll notice it's got today's date and today's time on it. Now, the clock isn't moving, but if I refresh, the clock changes. Okay, so there's some JavaScript in here. The program is somewhat interactive, but to be truly interactive, we'd have something like this, and it would be like 7:06, 21 a.m., 22 a.m., 23 a.m., etc. And we're going to get to that in not too long, to be honest with you. All right, a page that has no JavaScript in it, so that a page that is not updated always basically looks the same unless you stop the website and actually go in and change the file, is known as a static page. So really, in the I Love Missouri thing that we've got in here, static, 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 static. This is the only thing that's in there that is semi-dynamic. All right. How do you add JavaScript to your page? Well, guess what? Just like we had 3 different ways to enter CSS or cascading style sheets in a page, we also have 3 different ways that we can add JavaScript to a page. All right, we can add it internally, which means typically either at the top of the program or at the bottom of the program. We can add it inline, which means right in the HTML itself. And again, that's the worst way of doing it. And we can do it externally, where we put it in its own file. So they want us to make a copy of an example file called apply JavaScript, okay, .html. So let's grab this file. We've done this many times already. Let's copy it to the clipboard. Let's go into our, I'm still got that one, and I didn't do that lecture yet. So here it is. So what do we have in here? Well, it's a pretty simple HTML file, right? So let's save this, and I'm going to save it to the desktop, and I'm going to make a folder here that I'm just going to call JavaScript examples. All right, and this will become index.html. All right, not much to it. And if I come out here and run it, it's not going to do much as far as impressing you or whatever, and that's fine. There it is. There's a click me button, and notice right now it does nothing. Why? Because we haven't put any code in yet to make it act or react to anything. So we've done this. open your browser, you'll see that it creates a simple web page with a clickable button. It says next, go to your text editor and add the following in your head. So in the head section, just before the closing tag. So we're going to put this in. Right there. All right. And as you can see from the comment, this is going to allow us to add JavaScript to our program. So we'll put our JavaScript, as it says, right there. Now, again, this will be internal JavaScript that you either put in here, or sometimes you'll also see it at the very bottom of the body section, as opposed to inline JavaScript, which would be right in the middle of the body, as opposed to external JavaScript, where the code I'm about to put in, you'd put in an external file. All right, let's keep going on. It says next we'll add some JavaScript inside to make the page do something more interesting. It says add the following code there. I'll tell you what, let's do this. Let's add the code right there. Pretty this up a tad. All right, we will go over it literally in just a second. But before we do, let's run what we've got and see exactly what this does. All right, so it's the same thing we had. I'm going to refresh the screen. I'm going to call it Click Me. And it says you click the button. All right, not anything fantastic. But every time we're clicking the button, it says you click the button. Okay. So how did that happen? Well, the first thing that we're doing here is we are coming in, and this is our web document. We're adding what's called an event listener, and JavaScript is what is referred to as an event-driven programming language. What that means is, for lack of better words, JavaScript is kind of sitting there waiting for us to do something. All right. When the content has been loaded, then what's in here becomes available. This is the same code that we saw before. And what it's saying, well, it's almost the same code. This create paragraph, it's creating a variable here called para, which is creating a paragraph element. And the text that it puts in there is you click the button. And then it adds that to the body of our document. Then we've got this button. And in English, what this is saying is buttons will hold, look, find all of our buttons. Well, there's only the one. This says what I want to do is every single time I click that button, I want you to call this routine, which will write, you click the button and add it to the screen. Now, that might have been a decent explanation. That might not have been a real stellar explanation. So let's see exactly what the author says. All right, save your file and refresh your browser. You should now see that when you click the button, a new paragraph is generated. Okay. It says if your example doesn't seem to work, go through the steps again. So as far as things that you could put in there that would make this possibly at least not work. All right. Well, you need to have a beginning script tag. You need to have an ending script tag. The ending script tag must have a slash before it. Other than that, it looks just like the beginning one. You must spell words like document, add event listener, function, const. You must spell those you must spell those correctly. And if you don't, things won't work. Another thing is JavaScript, as they mentioned right here, is case sensitive. It's a very forgiving language, but if I came in here where we say const buttons, if later on in my program I created a variable right here where I used buttons but I had a capital B, This is where JavaScript is forgiving. Typically, right there, the way that this is currently written, it'll create a brand new variable called buttons with a capital B. So I'll have two different variables, buttons with a lowercase b, and then if I put it in there with a capital B, buttons with a capital B. So again, JavaScript is case sensitive and very fussy. So you need to enter your syntax exactly as shown, or it probably will not work. So again, we could have taken this code that we had right here and put it in its own file. Let's try to do that. So I'm going to grab that. I'm going to come in here, paste that in. So there it is. And I'm going to save this. So again, what I should do is come in here like this, and I'm going to save this as script.js. JavaScript files end with a .js extension. All right, then in here, what I'm going to do is all this code that we've put in, I'm going to comment. In fact, let's remove it, just so there's absolutely no, doubt as to where it's getting the code from. So now in this script tag, I don't put it in like this. I say script source equals script.js. And script.js is just a name I came up with. If that's confusing because I call this file in here, this is a script tag and this is the name of a file, then I apologize. But let's run this program again. How do I run it again? I'm going to come back in here and just refresh the page. And you'll notice all that's gone. Now, if it works, every time I click the button that says click me, I click the button here. Well, something's wrong. Now, believe it or not, that's a good thing. Why? Because I want to show you, because the system will let us know what we did wrong. I right mouse click on here and I bring up our inspector that we've done before. Now, I'm going to come in and find the console and see if it gives me any errors. And it doesn't look like it is giving me errors. So I'm not sure where the problem is. So let's, again, take a look. Let's double check. There it is. Okay, there's script. In fact, let's change the name. All right, we'll just call this my JavaScript file. All right, kind of a long name, kind of a stupid name, but just so you see that. All right, now I'm going to when I bring this up, it's going to say that doesn't exist anymore. Do I want to keep it in the editor? I'm going to say no, and I'm going to bring it up again with its new name. So there's my JavaScript file. All right, so here's index. Now I got to change the name of this to my JavaScript file. All right. Now, let's take a look at what they say here. All right. It says replace your current script element with the following. See, they called it script as well. I didn't put in the word defer. That's the problem. That's why I got the error. And when I say error, that's why it didn't work. All right. Now it should work. So let's run it again. I'm going to get rid of this. This is how confident I am. I'm going to refresh. There it is. Now, hey, I'm trying to look at these as being opportunities. So why did it give me an error? And why did putting this word in here fix it? Well, you've got to realize how stuff gets loaded into JavaScript. I'm sorry, how JavaScript gets loaded into the web page. Even more than that, how everything gets loaded into the web page. So the first thing that happens is all of the HTML gets parsed. All right. Then any CSS, and we don't have any in here, gets parsed. Then the JavaScript gets parsed. All right. That's the way we want it to happen. Okay, but probably what's happening in here is without the defer statement, it's going in and it's trying to access this before it's actually been created. All right, and that created isn't the right word, before it can be accessed. Defer basically means, hey, don't do anything with this file until everything has been loaded into memory. And again, that's why it worked. It says save and refresh your browser and you should see the same thing. It works the same, but now we've got an external file. This is generally a good thing in terms of organizing your code and making it reusable across multiple files. Plus, the HTML is easier to read without JavaScript dumped into it. And I would definitely agree with that. So you should have your HTML and HTML files, your JavaScript and JS files, your CSS in CSS files. All right, it says you can see this version and live if you want to. Well, I just showed it to you, so we shouldn't have to look at it. Now, to make this an even better program, it won't run any better, but I really should come in here and start doing stuff like this. So I'm going to make a CSS folder, even though we don't have any CSS. I'm going to make an images folder, even though we don't have any images. And I'm going to make a JS folder. And in that JS folder, I'm going to move this. So I'm going to move it there. Now again, there's probably a good chance when I bring this up, it says that file doesn't exist anymore. Should I keep it in the editor? No. And I've got to now say that this exists in my JS folder. All right. And if I want to bring that file up again, now I open and I double click JS and I open that up. Now I don't need this open to run the program. But if I come back again to run the program, and I refresh, it should still work just fine, and it does. But what I've done now, and the reason this is, quote, better, unquote, is I've written the program the way you should write programs. In other words, a place for everything and everything in its place. My CSS will go in here, my images will go in here, my JavaScript will go in here. Some people go to the extreme of creating an HTML folder and putting their HTML files in there. I don't do that. All right. Okay. Inline JavaScript handlers. It says, note, sometimes you come across bits of actual JavaScript code living inside of the HTML. So we could have done this and basically put this right inside of our code itself. And what I mean is this. We could have come in here and taken this code that you've got right here, all right, and we could have taken it and put it right inside of here. We'll put it down below this. And we would have put it in script tags, but we're not going to reference any file because rather than that, it'll be right here. So we put that in. So we can do that. Doesn't hurt anything, all right, and we could have done it just like that. All right. Then this script tag that you see right here, we would no longer need because we have put this inline. Now the problem is if we do this and I run the program, it's no longer going to work the way that it has been because we haven't put any code behind that button. So the button doesn't know that it's supposed to run that routine. How do we do that? Well, we come back and we change the button to this. This says when we click the button, we want to run the create paragraph routine that's right here. All right. So we come back into here and we change that button, this line of code. I'll tell you what, let's comment it out. And we'll put in this line. Now when we run this, it'll say click me with an exclamation point on it, because we added that. But notice it works the same way. Now, you might look at that and go, well, you know what, that's better. We've got everything in one file. But what you've done is you've interspersed and you put JavaScript right inside of your HTML directly. And that's considered to be a poor way of putting this stuff in. Not that it's incorrect. It's just considered a poor programming practice. All right. So as it says, the demo has exact same functionality. All right, I think I'm going to come back because I'm at 20 minutes already. And well, let's just finish this. There's just a couple more things. Script loading strategies. There are a number of issues involved with getting scripts to load at the right time. All right. A common problem is that all the HTML on the page is loaded in the order in which it appears. If you use JavaScript to manipulate elements on the page, more specifically the DOM, your code may not work depending on how you've got the code put in there. It says an old-fashioned solution to this kind of problem is to put your script element right at the bottom of the body. And that's many people do it that way, have done it that way and still do. The way to do it today is, as it says, to use either async and defer. And there's async. And you'll see defer, I believe, in just a bit. We've already looked at defer. Scripts loaded using async will download the script without blocking the rendering of the page, but it'll wait to execute it, all right, until what's considered to be the right time. Scripts with defer will run in the order they appear on the page and execute them as soon as the script and content are downloaded. So as we finish this up, and I'm sorry it ran a little more than 20 minutes, async and defer, as mentioned here, both instruct the browser to download the scripts in what's called a separate thread of execution while the rest of the page is downloading. So the page is not blocked by the script, blocked meaning that it stops, basically. If your script should run immediately and they don't have any dependencies, use async. If they need to wait for parsing like ours did, use defer. When in doubt, use defer. All right, finally for this section, comments. Single line comment is right here. So if you put in 2 forward slashes, everything in a JS or JavaScript file, everything to the right of the 2 forward slashes is now commented out. A multi-line comment starts with a /*, ends with a //. Same way we had had comments in our CSS files. So here they've added a single line comment here and a multi-line comment here. In general, more comments are usually better than less, but be careful if you find yourself adding lots of comments. And also don't explain simple operations. If you've got a line of code in there that says, and you'll learn this later, but like let age equal 21, don't put a comment in there that says I'm now setting the age to 21. All right, it's just redundant. So this was our first step into the world of JavaScript. We began to have just some theory, and we looked at a couple of very simple examples. So next, we're going to jump into our first splash into JavaScript, and I'll be back with that shortly.